From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
They labeled the killings a criminal event. Lieutenant Colonel Mike Tarse's men said that they found all 17 of the Iraqis killed that day were killed as a result of unjustified and unprovoked fire by the Blackwater operatives.
Independent journalist Jeremy Scahill addressing the Vice President of Blackwater. This comes as the State Department announces it has extended Blackwater's contract in Iraq for another year. Then Chilean writer Isabel Allende joins us in our Firehouse studio. She's just written her memoir, The Sum of Our Days. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A new report by the U.S. Institute for Peace says the United States is no closer to achieving its goals in Iraq than it was a year ago, despite the so-called surge. The authors of the report conclude, quote, without political progress, the U.S. risks getting bogged down in Iraq for a long time to come, with serious consequences for its interests in other parts of the world. The study was written by the same experts who advised the Iraq Study Group. The report said lasting political development could take 5 to 10 more years if the U.S. remains fully committed to Iraq. The report was released on Sunday, just 2 days before top U.S. Commander General David Petraeus and Ambassador Ryan Crocker are scheduled to brief Congress on the war. In Iraq, at least 22 Iraqis and 5 U.S. troops died Sunday as fighting resumed between U.S.-backed Iraqi forces and Shiite militias loyal to Muqtada al-Sadr. 2 U.S. soldiers died in a rocket attack on the Green Zone. Another U.S. soldier died in a separate attack on a military base in Baghdad. The Green Zone has been repeatedly pounded with mortar rounds since Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki launched a crackdown on Shia militias in Basra last month. Senator Hillary Clinton's chief campaign strategist, Mark Penn, has stepped down just days after it was revealed he'd been hired by the Colombian government to help lobby for a new trade deal with Washington. It's unclear what role Penn will retain in the campaign. His polling firm will continue to provide polling and advice to Clinton. On Friday, several American labor leaders called for Penn's resignation after the Wall Street Journal reported he'd met with Colombia's ambassador to help craft a strategy to secure passage of the Colombian free trade deal, which Clinton opposed. Teamsters President James Hoffa said, quote, how can we trust that a President Hillary Clinton would stand strong against this trade deal when her top advisor is being paid by Colombia to promote it? It's not the first time Mark Penn's business deals at the firm Burson Marsteller have come under scrutiny. Other clients of Penn's have included the mortgage lender Countrywide Financial, the mercenary firm Blackwater, and Philip Morris. In other campaign news, the New York Sun reports a key advisor to Senator Barack Obama's campaign is recommending in a confidential paper that America keep up to 80,000 troops in Iraq as of late 2010. Colin Powell's plan is at odds with a public pledge of the Illinois senator to withdraw combat forces from Iraq within 16 months of taking office. Powell serves as the day-to-day coordinator of Obama's working group on Iraq, but denied the paper represents the campaign's Iraq position. On Friday, the 3 major presidential candidates gave speeches marking the 40th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Senator John McCain attended a memorial at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, the site of King's assassination. McCain was jeered as he apologized for his longtime opposition to creating a federal holiday in honor of King. In 1983, McCain was one of 77 Republican members of Congress to oppose the King holiday. In 1987, McCain publicly supported the governor of Arizona's decision to repeal the state's recognition of King. At a rally in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Senator Hillary Clinton recalled seeing Dr. King speak.
Dr. King's call to action that evening in Chicago led me to confront a world bigger and broader than the one I inhabited. He had a way of doing that, of pushing us outside our own comfort zone, of making it clear that we had to be part of the revolution that was going on. It wasn't a revolution of guns. It was a revolution of hearts and minds, of attitudes and actions.
Senator Obama spoke as well.
That instead of having a politics that's living up to Dr. King's call for unity, we've had a politics that's used race to drive us apart, when all this does is feed the forces of division and distraction and stop us from solving our problems.
In other campaign news, former Republican Congressmember Bob Barr of Georgia has formed an exploratory committee to run for president on the Libertarian ticket. Former Democratic Senator and presidential candidate Mike Gravel also recently announced plans to seek the Libertarian nomination. In Haiti, at least 4 people have died during protests over the rising price of food. The prices of rice, beans, and fruit have gone up by 50% in Haiti over the last year. The protests began Thursday and continued over the weekend. Similar food riots have been occurring across Africa in recent weeks. In Burkina Faso, a nationwide strike has been called for Tuesday. Food riots have also been reported in Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Mauritania, and Senegal. Last week, African finance ministers warned the rise in international food prices poses significant threats to Africa's growth, peace, and security. In Sierra Leone, the cost of rice has risen by 300%. Last month, the World Food Program issued an urgent appeal for an additional $500 million. Bettina Lucier of the World Food Program says the enormous spike in food prices is caused by a variety of factors.
I think what we are facing is a perfect storm. More and more people are going hungry and need food aid. At the same time, we've got the lowest food reserves in some 30 years on the markets. At the same time, prices have gone up tremendously, sometimes doubled in the last few months. And you have got climate change with less harvests, droughts, floods. So the situation is really critical, and we have to act now. We cannot waste time. We have to act now.
In Egypt, police have arrested more than 200 people in an attempt to crush plans for a nationwide general strike to protest the rising cost of food and basic necessities. In the Egyptian town of Mahaya al-Kobra, police fired rubber bullets and tear gas at striking textile workers. Meanwhile, here in the United States, food pantries are reporting major food shortages. Anya Duggan says the food bank for New York City has seen a sharp drop in food donations over the past year.
And so we have less food in our warehouse. We're practically seeing empty shelves every week in the warehouse when we used to be brimming over and able to turn food around really quickly. What that means is that there's less food in food pantries and soup kitchens around the city, and you literally have people standing on line for hours at a time waiting for food, only to be turned away because the food runs out.
In other economic news, the U.S. economy lost 80,000 jobs in March, the biggest drop in 5 years. The official unemployment rate rose to 5.1%. Since the start of the year, over 230,000 jobs have disappeared. This is Brian Fabry, chief economist of BNP Paribas.
Job losses that we've seen over the first 3 months of this year are basic confirmation of the fact that we probably have been in recession all year long. The idea, I think, is that not only will job losses make things more difficult, it'll obviously cause consumer confidence to plunge, but it'll also make it more difficult for people to actually go out and buy more things. And this is the downward spiral, then, that lost jobs create for the economy.
In Zimbabwe, opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai is insisting he beat President Robert Mugabe outright in last month's presidential election, and that no runoff vote is needed.
A runoff will polarize and traumatize this country. This country does not need another war. It is now, therefore, imperative for SADC, the AU, and the UN to move in to prevent this chaos, violence, and dislocation that now grips this country. African leaders surely must now say no to Mugabe, in the same way the Zimbabwean people have said no to him.
Meanwhile, Mugabe is calling for a recount. Official elections still have not been released. A Zimbabwe court is expected to rule today on whether it has the authority to order the release of the delayed presidential election results. A leading critic of the American Psychological Association's stance on interrogation stands a chance of becoming the APA's next president. During the initial phase of the selection process, Stephen Reisner received the most nominating votes. Dr. Reisner is running on a platform opposing the use of psychologists to oversee abusive and coercive interrogations of prisoners at Guantanamo and secret CIA black sites. The International Olympic Committee is privately threatening to punish athletes who take part in protests during the Summer Games in Beijing. In an internal memo, the Olympic Committee said, quote, "Rules for athletes clearly state that the venues of the Games are not a place for proactive political or religious expression." Meanwhile, in London, police arrested 35 pro-Tibet activists Sunday after demonstrators disrupted the Olympic Torches marathon relay. One protester got his hands on the torch before being wrestled to the ground